Hi, I'm Jake, and today we'll be kicking off a multi-part mini-series about how to Death Guard in the current meta. It's been approximately 4 months now since the Death Guard Codex was released, which gave us all enough time to have moved on from our own gripes about losing this and losing that. Well, it could just be me for being still salty about losing Demon Engine rerolls. But the units and army functionality, which many originally thought were, quote, unbeatable, have since then been figured out through playtesting and general analysis. But admittedly to this day, I've still yet to run the broken Mortarion because I felt he was just too easily countered within my own competitive scene. So what do I think Death Guard are really good at? Number one, their staying power and their durability thanks to a wave of toughness 5 multi-wound troops along with plenty of access to invulnerable saves and even some ways to add feel no pains. Pair those with the new disgustingly resilient rule, which reduces damage by 1, can be insanely difficult for your opponent to deal with. Basically, your entire army is a bunch of cheaper dreadnoughts running around.
Hello.
The number 2 thing that I think Death Guard are great at is close combat. We have some of the most hardest hitting melee units, which opponents aren't always used to dealing with. Sure, we lost Hateful Assault and Death to the False Emperor, but this was more than made up for with the innately approved data sheets as well as other stratagem combos. You haven't really lived until you've swung 5 Deathstrap Terminators with the Scythe profile who are buffed by a Biologist Putrefire with full rerolls. By the way, that's 50 attacks hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, generating mortal wounds on 6s to wound, and then rerolling wound rolls of 1 because plague weapons, baby! Lastly, synergies and character support are what I've noticed to be just simply incredible. The introductions to contagions and how they set the tone for the play company of your choice is not only fun, but unlock an even deeper element to list building. Originally, I was on the fence about how much I would actually appreciate deadly pathogen choices, but anytime there are points remaining, that's one of the first places I'll look. 10 points here, 15 points there. On top of this, you're able to combine characters to massively bump up your army's efficiency overall. There really isn't a bad character we have access to, only 1 or 2 situational ones, which we'll be covering in the next parts of the series. So many of the warlord traits, relics, contagion, discipline, spells are just really good. I always love it when you have the ability to make difficult choices because you have so many outstanding options. Alternatively, what are some of their weaknesses? Well, of course, this should be relatively obvious, but mobility and range are an evident crutch into getting our tough, hard-hitting units where you want them to be onto the battlefield. Sure, there are faster choices which you can take, but some long-range firepower is lacking in some cases, but overall it's a notable problem with pure Death Guard armies being outran and outmaneuvered by substantially faster opponents. Secondly, we have a fairly elite level point costs, which are really felt when you're trying to run multiples of certain units, like Terminators. I'm not saying we're overcosted by any measure, because the points that you pay for in Death Guard, you're always going to feel like they're worth it. You just have to be far more careful on what you pick and how you're going to mesh it into the rest of your army. Lastly, Death Guard's secondary objective choices, by comparison, just aren't that great to me. What I'm comparing it to, which you might ask, is look at the Dark Angels and even the most recent Space Wolves Codex, which have secondaries which I feel outshine Death Guards. Not to mention both of those armies will have access to the awesome Space Marine secondaries, such as Oath of Moments. So just by comparison, I think ours are okay. Spread the Sickness specifically functions alright, and it's actually one of my go-tos, depending on the mission, of course. But you can only perform the action once per turn, which is fair, and I suppose usually average about 9 points on this one, which is, again, decent. The Spoiled Grounds is a major no-go for me at first glance. It looks alright, but being that the Bubonic Astartes keyword is a requirement to score, most of these really hurts. Requiring specific placements and the need to survive by the end of the game with only Bubonic Astartes units is what's really tough most of the time. The introduction of this new keyword in the Codex definitely threw a lot of people off, having to remember what is and what isn't Bubonic Astartes. However, the main overall reason I'm not a fan of this one in general is because the same reasons why I don't like taking engage on all fronts. Death Guard have a hard time being mobile and not being able to park on the center board when you need to, or reposition, go left or go right whenever you need to, let alone having to decide to let go of a secondary is just not ideal for me. The third secondary is just trash. No need to even remember what it's called. But in case you are curious, it's Fleeing Vectors. If you have the book, go check out, and it'll relatively be obvious as to why. For the next video in this series, I'll be going over which unit choices in each category are top and bottom choices. I'm not big on labeling tier levels on things because in my experience it hinges heavily on what your entire army and playstyle looks like. And hopefully these videos will help everyone find a good or better starting point in building and running your Death Guard army in the current 9th edition competitive meta. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, and if you found this video to be helpful or informative by any measure, please stay subscribed and join in on the conversation in the comments below, which greatly help the production of more content. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.